Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Aditya Ragwa with the TERI Council for Business Sustainability, and I welcome you all to the 21st edition of TERI's World Sustainable Development Summit. We are indeed excited to have you at this thematic track titled Global Agenda for Industry Transitions, Relevance, Challenges, and Opportunities for India. This session has been co-conceptualized by the TERI Council for Business Sustainability in partnership with EU, German Federal Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation, Building and Nuclear Safety, and GIZ. This session focuses on the importance and timeliness of multi-stakeholder initiatives in driving global industry transitions and the challenges and opportunities that they present within the Indian context. Discussions today will hinge on addressing the various facets required to enable and accelerate industry transitions in India, such as public-private partnerships, technology, finance, policy, and regulations. To get things started, I invite Mr. Edwin Koekkoek, the First Councillor, Energy and Climate Action, EU Delegation to India, to open the session. Over to you, Edwin.
Thank you very much, and a very warm welcome to all of you. This is actually the last session in which we are involved as EU during this World Sustainable Development Summit. We have been involved in I think 7 or 8 different sessions with European speakers. And this is the last, but certainly not the least. Actually, industry transition will be a very important element of the clean energy transition and of the green transition. And we are very happy to work together with the government of India, with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the SPIPA project in the area of industry transition. The SPIPA project is a project that focuses on the implementation of the Paris Agreement. We do that project in close cooperation with GIZ India, and it's financed by the European Union and also by Germany. I don't want to say too much because we have an enormous list of speakers to discuss on this important issue. I'm very honored that we will have Mrs. Johanna Lissinger-Peitz, the ambassador for Stockholm Plus 50. We will have Mrs. Rajeshi Ray from the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. We will have Dr. Ashok Kumar, Deputy Director General of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Then we will have J. Kumar Gaurav, who will present this cooperation that we are having with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And then we will have a very impressive panel, which is chaired by our good and close friend, Honorable Ambassador Puri. So thank you very much for all being here. I'm very much looking forward to a session in which we have concrete recommendations on how to strengthen industry transition in India and globally. Thank you very much, and back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwin. I now call upon Mr. Girish Sethi, the Senior Director, TERI, to set the context for the session. Over to you, Girish.
You are muted, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So I was just mentioning that this is actually the 4th session on industry transition. Am I audible now, I guess? Aditya, can anybody confirm? Am I audible?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was just mentioning that this is actually the 4th session on the industry transition during this WSDS that we are organizing over the last 3 days. We'd organized one with the World Bank yesterday. There was a CEO roundtable, I think, which was also moderated by Ambassador Puri. And also we had one session on research and innovation with regard to industry transition on day 1, which was with IIT Bombay. TERI has actually been working on this theme of industry transition and more specifically on the potential role of hydrogen over the past few years with support from many international philanthropic organizations like SAFE, Bloomberg, Shakti, and many of the governments and international businesses through their embassies have also shown great interest on the theme of industry transition, and specifically I would say hydrogen, green hydrogen. Like I think countries from Europe like Norway, Netherlands, Sweden, Italy, and now lately also we are working closely with Japan. We also have, I think today, the representation from Germany as well as Sweden in this thematic track. Why I'm saying all this is that this really shows the interest globally, also domestically, on this subject of industry transition. Just having 4 sessions in one conference on this subject speaks volumes. And also this very clearly shows, I also believe, that these so-called harder to abate sectors like iron and steel, cement and ammonia could potentially be the possible to abate sectors. Luckily, we are having this session today. Yesterday, we heard the much awaited announcement of the green hydrogen policy by the Ministry of Power in India. The policy has outlined quite a few enablers for the green hydrogen economy to take off in India, things like the interstate transmission for 25 years, land at the ports for encouraging exports of green hydrogen, single window clearance, and quite a few other things. So I would just like to say this, that these are exciting days for the industry sector as we move ahead, and for the clean energy movement as a whole, I would think. Before I end, I would just like to acknowledge also the presence of representatives from the Government of India, from MIFCC, BEE, as well as I think the LeadIT Secretariat, the Clean Energy Ministerial, with whom we have been working with LeadIT Secretariat. We had a very nice conference on the road mapping tool late last year, and we plan to have another one next month. So we are really proud to be associated with all of you, and we really look forward to your support and guidance as we plan our activities further. So thank you all once again for joining. Back to you, Aditya.
Thank you, Mr. Sethi. We are, as Edwin mentioned, we are indeed delighted to be joined by Ms. Johanna Lissinger-Peitz, Ambassador of Stockholm Plus 50, Swedish Ministry of Environment. She's here with us today, and I invite her to share her opening remarks. Over to you, Ms. Peitz.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and good morning. Good afternoon, colleagues, and good morning to everyone. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak at this important sessions of the World Sustainable Development Summit. This, as the previous representative says, is really exciting days for industries. But before moving to the future, let us just look back for a second, 50 years, which also Prime Minister Modi spoke in his opening remarks. 1972, the UN organized the first conference on the environment in Stockholm, Sweden. The conference, in which India's former Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, played an important role, set the agenda for decades to come. 50 years later, the Swedish cooperation with India remains very strong in the field of environment and climate change. And one important example of this is our joint efforts through the Leadership Group of Industry Transition, initiated by Sweden and India in 2019. I was myself in New York at the time, working very closely with the Permanent Mission of India, so I have this initiative very close at my heart. It's a platform for leading public and private sectors with high ambition to drive industrial decarbonization and forge plans, policies, and commitments that align heavy industry with the goals of the Paris Agreement. I did also very much like that notion of the hard-to-abate sectors to be the possibly-to-abate sectors. And I think this is something where we have seen a moment very, very fast. LeadIT is a group that gathers ministers and CEOs from around the world who all share the belief that we can and must do more to reduce emissions from heavy industry and at the same time ensure a just industry transition that create new green jobs. We will hear more about this later in this session from Dr. Koekkoek. Through new technology, renewable energy, and improvements of energy efficiency, Sweden is aiming to become climate neutral 2045. The private sector is playing an important part for this, and we are currently witnessing how the business landscape is transforming through innovative and green ideas. The fossil-free steel, large-scale green battery manufacturing, just to mention a few. In this spirit, Sweden, together with Kenya, will in June this year co-host a Stockholm Plus 50 conference, a commemorating of 50 years that has passed since 1972. It offers an opportunity for nations, business, civil society to work across silos, to strengthen linkages and address vital nexus issues for a healthy planet, for the prosperity of all, because that is really our responsibility, but it also, and I think that's what we will hear about today, an opportunity. If the world at large had done its job in becoming sustainable, being on track with all our Agenda 2030 with the Paris Agreement, then Stockholm would solidly be a moment of celebration, a moment of commemoration. But I think we all know that it's quite clear that collectively we haven't done our job. Biodiversity losses, climate change, plastic pollution, just to name a few examples, are both driven by our economy activities and sometimes also very much mutually reinforce each other. In 1972, business played a quite limited role in the conference. In 2022, the story is completely different. It is different and it must be different. Business, including finance sectors, of course, has a key role in delivering and realizing sustainable transformations and green and inclusive recovery. Companies cannot do this on their own. It's very much that iterative process between policy, between business, finance, civil society, that we work together to work and create a whole of government, whole of society approach. Similar to today's session, Stockholm is and will be a dialogue with committed and ambitious business from the north and south, of different sizes and from different diversity of sectors, as an integrated part of the meeting. The input of business in a multi-stakeholder context will strengthen proposals and recommendations coming out of Stockholm and add up to a joint action and common legacy and delivery on the ground. The business that sees the opportunities in global transition will be the ones that lead the way for years to come. To conclude, I just want to encourage everyone to see Stockholm as a platform from which to further push collective transformation to a climate neutral and nature positive world. It's also not too late to do our job. It's our opportunity. It's our responsibility. And Stockholm is really a moment for us to reflect together, to connect stakeholders, policy agendas, and to accelerate actions, because we have to act with a greater sense of urgency and a greater sense of togetherness. With that, I'm very much looking forward to the session and wish you all the best. And thank you again for this invitation to, I think, it may be the last session where the EU is engaged, but it's definitely not the least important ones. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pites, for your remarks. It was indeed good to hear that, the businesses are very important for the world to achieve its sustainability agenda. We are indeed honored to be also joined by Ms. Rajshri Ray, the Economic Advisor, Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, the Government of India. She's here with us today. I call upon her to deliver the special remarks for the session. Over to you, Ms. Ray.
Thank you very much. Distinguished speakers and participants, very good afternoon from Delhi to all of you. First of all, I thank the organizers for this opportunity. So let me start by saying that we are all aware that the objectives of the Paris Agreement requires that we move in a low carbon development trajectory, and that includes all critical sectors of the economy, including the hard-to-abate sectors, abate industry sectors. In fact, the industry sector, including the hard-to-abate industries such as cement, steel, chemicals, then heavy duty transport, etc., accounts for about 30% of the global CO2 emissions. So industry sector play a very critical role in the global transition which we are envisaging towards a low carbon development pathway. as far as India is concerned, we are taking ambitious climate actions, and in fact, India's presentation at COP26, especially the nectar elements about the net zero target by 2070, it is an ambitious announcement. And Indian industry partners, they are also taking ambitious actions, including various voluntary commitments, which we can see from India's private sector in areas of renewable energy use, resource efficiency, and various other environmental protection measures. I'm very glad to say that we have seen a great amount of synergy of India's domestic climate policy framework with the actions and with the actions from our private sector in India. The affordability and accessibility, here the most critical factors for us to take actions is the affordability and accessibility of cutting-edge technologies, and of course the availability of adequate finance to these sustainable sectors that definitely play a very important critical role in facilitating the economic transition which we are looking towards the low carbon, and in the long term the net zero, the pathway which we have envisaged. So this requires definitely more and more investment into the sustainability sectors, and of course collaborative partnership between countries and private sector companies to drive those innovative technology research and development, then the next stage commercialization and scaling up of in areas of cutting edge technologies, including one can think about the green hydrogen, fuel cells, clean energy storage, e-mobility sectors, and so on. In fact, I would just like to mention here is that the recent union budget 22-23 that has a great amount of sustainability as prominent focus in the budget. So, of course, all of us will appreciate that making the business case for low carbon products require collective action of industries, governments, as well as the consumers. But then the point is that we have to transition into a business case so that we sustain the momentum which we are creating. And India has taken some leadership in fostering 3 major global partnerships in critical areas. In the case of solar energy, in the case of disaster resilient infrastructure, and of course the leadership for IT transition, the hard-to-abate industry sectors, this initiative. So leadership for industry transition group, which was launched by India and Sweden along with the member countries and companies, that is to support to support the acceleration, to accelerate the transition of industries towards low carbon, low greenhouse gas development pathway. And purpose of this leadership for industry transition is to provide the policy and decision support for this sector, hard to abate industry sector, the transition which is required, and the transition roadmaps towards the low carbon emissions, and enable collaboration for high level dialogues, and also facilitate that financing transition which is required to strengthen the NDCs. So this LeadIT group provides that platform to facilitate for sharing solutions, knowledge, and expertise, so that we drive that action in these hard-to-abate sectors. So at present, I'm happy to say that LeadIT Group has 16 member countries and 19 global companies, including Dalmia Cement represented here. Mahindra Group and SpiceJet from India are all partnered in this thing. So in the end, I want to state that yes, India has been pursuing a low carbon transition, while striking the balance between ecology, the objectives of ecology, objectives of economic development, and sustainability. So, and India's long-term transition Of course, we'll have, and we do have ambitious plans of renewable energy, including hydrogen, energy efficiency measures, sustainable transport, forest and biodiversity conservation, and the promotion of sustainable lifestyles. So at the end, I would like to sum it that we need many partnerships, meaningful partnerships from all stakeholders to realize our goal of low carbon industry transition. I thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ray, for your sharing your perspectives and showing how India is showcasing its climate leadership at a global level and collaborating with other countries and organizations. We are now next. I invite Dr. Ashok Kumar, the Deputy Director General of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, to share his thoughts on the relevance of industry transitions for India and Indian industries. Over to you, Dr. Kumar.
Good afternoon and greetings from India to all the distinguished panelists. It's my privilege and first of all, thank you to EU, TERI and GIZ for giving me this opportunity. Drawing from what Madam Rajshri has left, I would add to some of the thoughts of mine in and around a program called Perform, Achieve and Trade Scheme, which is a flagship program for industrial energy efficiency. And I would also add that the transition of industry in India is on. It is not something that is yet to take. So we have, for instance, the Dalmia cement from the cement sector is represented here. The cement sector in India is now the global best performing sector as far as the energy consumption per unit of cement production. So several initiatives, the credit goes to the sector. They have invested and they have taken the best of the technologies, practices and all possible ways, and they have achieved the level that are there. Now, from here, where to move further? So that is the question that sectors like cement would be asking, to transition from the current level of their efficiency, current level of their emission intensity, how to move forward. And in that program's context, I would try to touch upon the topics of the today's discussion, and hopefully that would be some useful input to the August gathering and for further discussions down the line. So the relevance of industrial transition, global scale, of course, but in Indian context as well, it is very important that in India, the industry is the largest consumer of energy resource. So any transition towards a low carbon or lighter on the environment is a dividend that we are going to get in the long run, not only for the economic perspective, but from the larger societal perspective. So transition to a low carbon industry is very imperative that we and the country is currently on the move, and the program like PAT is testimony to its results that it has offered in the last 10 years. We see that this particular scheme has, as of now, kind of saved the energy consumptions of the tune of the countries that are using their total energy. For example, the program of PAT scheme in the 18-19 have saved around 14 million tons of oil equivalent, which is almost equal to the total energy supply of the country like Sri Lanka. So a huge contributions toward the global cause of climate change that the Indian industry is doing. So definitely the transition has to be enabled. And in this context, I think this platform, we would like just to solicit the cooperation and partnership so that India can even contribute more than what is so far has been doing. And many of you would know that India is one of the largest large economies who is on track to the Paris goals. So India has a potential to contribute given its size and its numbers in the industry as well as in other spheres. But of course, India needs to be enabled, and platforms like LeadIT can give that handhold support so that further contributions can be made. And in the aspects of I can say the challenges, the madam has also kind of highlighted that now again in the context of PAT, I'm asking that the industry like cement or fertilizer or to some extent the iron and steel, they have taken several measures that are possible within their limited pockets. Now, moving beyond in this carbon constrained space that we are getting into, where obligations of the way resources can be used and the emissions can be released, those are very constrained. There's a lot of support in the form of means of implementation has to come. So in terms of technology, there should be technologies available, as well as those are affordable, adoptable, customizable, and several other fine tuning that has to be done to suit to the Indian industry so that India can deliver. And coupled with that, we need to be supplemented with the resources, in-house resources or maybe external multilateral, however. So in that context also, we need to develop models, business cases, how we can promote that possibility of technology transfer. And then also the challenge of a country like ours is a very diverse country with the length and breadth spreading to hundreds and thousands of kilometers, with climatic zones ranging from 6 to 7 zones of climate. And so in that variability, industry sits at a very different topography. So we also need to understand that those challenges of industry, how will we manage the transition in those conditions? So then I would touch upon the opportunity. Of course, the challenges bring some opportunity, definitely. We have an opportunity to build better. There is an initiative to build better. Globally, there are efforts in that direction. India also has a lot to do. Many of the infrastructures are built, yet to be built. Many of the industries, everything has to come, So we have this opportunity to build a very lighter and softer industry so that it doesn't damage or corrode the nature and the society to the level that the erstwhile development or the industry has done it. So we have the opportunity to have our own way of doing things. So we need to be very innovative and we need to be very creative. And then the discussion on the circularity of it. There is a discussion going on in circularity, and circular practice is, at least at the material terms, the cement sector also practices. So there are circular use of waste from some industry they use as a fuel. But then we need to move the circularity discussion beyond the material circularity. We need to have, I think, a circularity or a little bit of tempering of the linear world view of the growth itself. We need to give some kind of a bend to the way that growth trajectory or growth perspective is. So there, the circularity of material will fit into the circularity of a world view. Then only I think we would be in a longer run, we will be taking the world to a sustainable level. So with that 2 cents of mine, I would stop here and thank you again for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for sharing, your views and, the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for India on its journey towards industry transitions. I now call upon Mr. Jay Kumar Gaurav, Senior Advisor GIZ, for a quick overview on the work being done under the SPIPA project. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditya, and good afternoon, everyone who have joined this very interesting session we are having on industry transition related issue. I have a small presentation, so I'm sharing my screen. I hope it is visible. Yes, so as part of the European Union and BMUV funded, the German Federal Ministry for Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection funded project SPIPA, Strategic Partnership for Implementation of Paris Agreement project. We are supporting studies related to low carbon industry transition in India. So just a brief overview, the SPIPA project supports India's inputs to LeadIT through sectoral studies and on-demand desk-based research support through a dedicated consultancy firm that we have hired. And we are conducting studies across 4 key sectors. These include iron and steel, cement, ammonia, and within chemicals, primarily petrochemical sector. So at the LeadIT platform, you can already see the Indian cement sector SDG roadmap, which is available. But we are doing some additional studies and deep dive in case of the cement sector analysis. The activity involves doing 4 sectoral studies and then assist in developing sectoral roadmaps, which is already an ongoing process for some sectors as part of the LeadIT Secretariat hosted by Stockholm Environmental Institute, and we have Dr. Goche presenting afterwards in the panel. The study that we are doing is basically involving desk-based research where we want to identify what are the low carbon measures. It involves some plant visit and assessment of the current status of technology adoption in these 4 sectors. And then we are also doing a lot of stakeholder interviews to understand what are the challenges to adopting these low emission technologies like energy efficiency, renewable energy, particularly use of hydrogen, carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies, waste and biomass technologies, because they also have a lot of potential to reduce emissions from these sectors. Then we are going to prepare sectoral emission profiles and see that what is the short-term, medium-term and long-term possibility of adopting low carbon technologies in these sectors. And then these studies that we'll be doing as part of the SPIPA project will provide an input to the development of the roadmaps for these sectors. And in addition to the technical part of the analysis, we are also going to focus on the financial aspects, that what will be the financing need if we want to adopt these technologies in the 4 sectors. And if we know the financing need, how can we access that financing? What are the barriers to accessing financing for these technologies? We have set up a technology evaluation criteria, which is balance between finance and the technology itself. So we want to see if there's financing available and possible for that kind of technology. Is it cost effective, viable? And then we also want to analyze that what is the emission reduction potential, how ready the technology is it commercially viable, easy to adopt, does it have replication potential, and also important is, are there vendors available to deploy this technology, or is it a very niche technology with very few suppliers? We have done a very detailed stakeholder mapping, so we know the companies in the sectors, we have the relevant ministries mapped out, and there are a lot of public sector enterprises also in these sectors. So we have mapped them along with the technology vendors, suppliers, and as well as other stakeholders like NGOs, think tanks, financial institutions in particular. And then we are going to ask these stakeholders questions related to how the industry can undergo the decarbonization pathway and how much time will it take, what are the short-term, medium-term and long-term solutions. We are also looking at financing mechanisms, so looking at transition bonds, public finance initiatives that can be taken up, what are the traditional financing options that can be explored, how climate change and market-based instruments, for example, how carbon markets can help in industrial decarbonization, how international climate finance can provide financing for these, and also a lot of public-private partnerships can be explored. So we'll do case studies in all these financing areas, And we are looking at examples. For example, there is already an Department of Science and Technology based R&D support for carbon capture, storage and utilization in India. And then we are mapping some international initiatives related to financing of low carbon industry transition. For example, there's CCS Infrastructure Fund in Norway of 1.83 billion US dollars. There's ETS Innovation Fund of the European Commission, which is $11.9 billion. And it is providing financing for these innovative technologies. Then green bonds is another option. And the emission trading scheme of EU ETS also is a very good example of how to support industry transition. So this was the brief about the study that we are doing, and we are going to approach all relevant stakeholders, including some of the participants who are in this webinar. So we look forward to your inputs. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jay, for sharing, how the work being done under the SPIPA project is, supporting the low carbon industry transition in India. Next up, I am indeed delighted to introduce our Power Pact panel for the discussions today. We are joined by Dr. Goche Mete, the head of LeadIT Secretariat, Stockholm Environment Institute, Mr. Anirban Ghosh, Chief Sustainability Officer, Mahindra Group, Dr. Antje Berger, Counselor, Climate and Environment, Embassy of the Federal Republic of Germany, Mr. Dan Donner, head of the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat, Mr. Mahendra Singhi, Managing Director and CEO, Dalmia Cement Bharat Limited, Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri, Distinguished Fellow TERI, who is also the chairperson of the session, and Mr. Prabodh Acharya, Chief Sustainability Officer of the JSW Group. I know we are running short of time, so without further ado, I hand over the lead to our chairperson, Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri. Please, over to you, sir.
Aditya, thank you very much. And let me start by adding my own welcome on behalf of TERI to our Power Pact panel. And I want to say something to Edwin. Edwin, it isn't by accident that you have done 7 sessions with us. I think it should be amply clear to everyone here, especially those who represent industry, that the European Union is India's largest investor, one of our largest trading partners, and beyond that, the source by which standards and all ways of doing business in India are set. So it's a relationship which is extremely deep, it's wide, and it's a relationship of mutual benefit. So I'm very happy that we are able to take this forward, of course, with the European Union's delegation, but also with the concerned countries, the Swedish government strongly there, the German government strongly there, GIZ, KFW, all of you are extremely welcome here. I think it's also very important to point out today that we are in the year 2022. For India, a year which is particularly important, and although it is Sweden which is hosting the event, the 50 years of Stockholm 1972. It was just mentioned in passing that the Indian Prime Minister played a significant role. I think it needs to be noted that the Indian Prime Minister was the only major leader from the developing world who was present in Stockholm, underlining India's deep commitment to the environment well before it became fashionable, because this is part of our DNA. And I'm delighted that here I see Mr. Mahendra Singhi, who's a member of the Governing Council of TERI too, and a leader in his own right, who did something which is extremely important for us to take on. And that was, for what used to be called hard to abate, he said, forget that. It shall be abated, and everybody else will see what is called possible to abate. Edwin, I also want to draw your attention to the fact that we are very appreciative of the European Union and its participation in the World Sustainable Development Summit. Vice President Frans Timmermans himself gave a message, and indeed a few months back visited the TERI campus and spoke to us at great detail. It is this relationship. Your ambassador has been strong. All the member states are strong. Why do I say all this, and why am I taking a couple of minutes of this time? Because I want to stress to people that this is not just one of the 20 panels, but perhaps the panel in which actually movement is possible, and where industry, the Indian economy, sees, let me say, a meeting of the minds with the people at the other end. And so therefore, I'm extremely grateful to my colleagues in TERI, very grateful to our colleagues from Stockholm who've joined. I want to tell everyone that we have a power-packed panel here. There are 6 wonderful people here, 3 from Europe and 3 from India. And I also see my friend Anirban Ghosh there. I want to make another small point to you. Anirban is a partner with me in a special initiative that TERI is undertaking with European think tanks like us on a track 2 dialogue on climate change. The SIF and others have strongly supported us. We've already put together something in the area of financing, which shall be public very soon. The next round is industry transition, where he himself will be one of the strong members of it. And what are we looking for? We have these dialogues at the level of the government, but what we are looking for is a few specific points of practicality so that something can be done. Remember, we've said net zero by 2070, but we've set the direction. Most of the other challenges are within 8 to 10 years. So India has taken perhaps the most ambitious targets on climate and on sustainability. And India needs partnerships. No one, in my opinion, better than Europe. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Dr. Koki Mete, I will call upon you to speak first, simply for a reason, and that is because you are coming from Stockholm. You are heading the LeadIT Secretariat, and this entire institution, including the Stockholm Environment Institute, you are in a sense the designated in the front for taking this transition forward and leading the process. I am therefore particularly happy that you chose to be with us today. Thank you very much for that, and I'm sure you will add considerably to the general knowledge base and the interesting aspects of actual collaboration and cooperation. Dr. Mete, the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. It's a really great pleasure to join you today. Indeed, I represent the Leadership Group for Industry Transition, and much has already been said about the initiative that we have all learned that it was launched in 2019, indeed, at the UN Climate Action Summit. And LeadIT is a growing group. We host the Secretariat at the Stockholm Environment Institute, where I am based. And SCI, in short, is a global think tank. We have offices around the world in 8 locations. And we work across all issues around sustainability. And I'm leading our practice on industry and energy. LeadIT indeed brings together 16 countries and 19 companies from heavy industries around the world. And we, as I mentioned, we have been growing quite significantly. So since 2021, we have welcomed 6 new members: the United States, Australia, Ethiopia, and the construction company, global company Skanska, Heidelberg Cement, and Salzgitter from Germany. And many countries and companies continue to show interest to join LeadIT. And as mentioned, the group is working together to accelerate action aligned with credible commitments to achieving net zero heavy industries. But we have been collaborating not only among ourselves, but also with our partners. We will shortly hear from the Clean Energy Ministerial, but LeadIT has been working closely with the Industry Deep Decarbonization Initiative, which has the objective to encourage governments to set meaningful green procurement targets and adapt their systems to meet those. And it's very crucial work. The LeadIT Secretariat has also worked alongside the Glasgow Steel Breakthrough and helped communicate aligned policy messages from low-carbon steel experts around the world ahead of COP26. I'm very pleased to hear about your work on finance, and I'd love to learn more because LeadIT is also engaged with finance institutions in dialogue, and we've been facilitating knowledge exchange on how industry transition can be achieved. And this has helped provide concrete recommendations and input to the LeadIT Summit statement. So indeed, at the LeadIT Summit at COP26, LeadIT endorsed all members of LeadIT, including our company members, have endorsed a set of finance principles on industry transition, which will support the development of a policy framework to de-risk projects. Will be bringing in in-country expertise. So it's crucial that we exchange on your work on finance. and improve existing matchmaking facilities from donor countries so that we can better target funding and enable donor coordination. Furthermore, LeadIT works very closely with student energy to ensure youth perspectives are integrated into industry transition agenda. So in 2021, we have supported an industry transition chapter of the Global Youth Energy Outlook to promote youth awareness and engagement on industry-related issues. And crucially, all LeadIT members commit to supporting governments and industries to co-produce stakeholder-led roadmaps. So it was already mentioned, but to this end, LeadIT Secretariat launched an interactive industry transition roadmap guide. We've launched it at COP26 to assist countries and companies to lead and develop their own roadmaps. Individual companies can also use this guide, and it's available at industrytransition.org. And we are currently focusing our efforts on India, and we have initiated discussions and workshops on industry transition to support sectoral road mapping process together with TERI and the SPIPA project, working very closely. And in these workshops, actors across the entire value chain, civil society, unions, and government officials come together. We have had Dania Samant with us as well in these workshops. And road mapping is crucial because it offers an opportunity to set out the timing and sequencing of policy, investment, and innovation in such a way that it reduces the risk of industries being locked into higher emission trajectories simply due to the lifespan of assets. So in 2022, we'll continue to engage with existing and new members of LeadIT. We'll be aiding in road mapping processes by facilitating dialogues, offering technical and methodological guidance for developing these roadmaps. So to close, we really look forward to continuing our work together with LeadIT members and partners, encouraging others, showcasing new industry transition policies, partnerships, and value chain collaborations between developing and developed countries and emerging economies. So thank you very much.
Ms. Mehta, thank you very much. I was very much interested in what you said on issues of financing. And let me assure you that in this small track 2 dialogue that we've set up, it occurred to me that many of the areas that we are talking about, the actual hard areas of work, industry being one of them, are critical and important. But if we won't have the fuel necessary to push them, which is using ordinary humans' language, that of money, we are not going to be able to go anywhere. And consequently, I also want to leave a thought with everyone that the ideas are not just about what comes from multilateral institutions, but leveraging of markets. And we have to go beyond what the UNFCCC provides. We really have to look at the economics as things currently stand. I want to thank you very much. We will certainly be in touch with you independent of this panel. And so for me, a particularly useful intervention from your side. Thank you. I now want to call upon someone from the Indian side. And I'll tell you who I want to call. I want to call upon Mr. Mahendra Singhi. And I'll tell you again why. To repeat what I said earlier, Mr. Singhi has done it. And I believe here on this panel, it is particularly important to hear those who are actually on the ground telling people it has been done. So I'm not just making a promise. We have a best policies, best practices example in front of you. Mr. Singhi, I'm only going to give you a few minutes. The reason is I want your enthusiasm and your work to speak for itself. The screen is yours.
Happy afternoon, everyone, and happy day to everyone. It has been always a great pleasure to hear so much appreciation from Ambassador Puri and all other friends also. I'm really thankful to first the Government of India, Government of Sweden, Stockholm Institute, TERI, who are supporting LeadIT in a big way. In fact, I was very fortunate to attend LeadIT Summit on 9th November in Glasgow, where a statement was issued, where Madam Koekkoek, she was leading it, and very ably all members who were there could issue a statement that what actions to be taken, how youth has to be involved, how finance principle would be implemented. So I'm very happy that these initiatives by the LeadIT can play a very, very important role. Since so much has been talked about Dalmia Cement, let me just highlight for a minute that Dalmia Cement has been one founding member of LeadIT, and at the same time, to lead it forward, we also became member of the First Movers Coalition created by Senator John Kerry and World Economic Forum. The whole purpose for us is to, one, implement whatever is possible, lead it wherever possible, and at the same time do create synergy. And I'm very happy that Ambassador Puri has once again highlighted hard-to-abate to possible-to-abate. So my request to all the organizers, all the moderators, to use now cement and steel as possible to abate, because these words do make a difference. And similarly, Ambassador Puri sir, I have one request. I still call now hard to get green finance. So now we have to have possible to get green finance, in which GIZ, Stockholm Institute, TERI, and both the governments can play a very, very important role. I'm very happy that our Minister of Environment, Mr. Bhupendra Yadavji, he is also playing very active role and taking full interest that how the industry of India and other industries can be part of this green revolution. I have been part of various discussions, and I do feel that there are various projects which are available for implementation, not only with the Dalmia Cement, but maybe with other steel company, other cement company, and those projects should be taken up fast without waiting for the complete study to be done for the whole sector and all this. So maybe Mr. J of GIZ or others, they can look into it, because point is that the innovation fund would be required. I do know that in India government, not much innovation fund is available, but whatever say innovation or other finance fund which was highlighted in presentation, if that can also be made to developing country, that will be great. My two wishes: one, that whatever has been stated in the summit statement, in that how finance principles can be implemented at the earliest, and how industry can be assured that on these grounds you can definitely get the finance, you can get the finance for creating demonstration project, because particularly in developing country, it will be seeing is believing. So to create that, I think all of us have to create demonstration project. Whatever we could do from our own resources, we have done it, we would continue to do it, but to create examples for others, I think big demonstration projects are required. And even in statement also, it was said that now we have to migrate from a pilot level project to industry level project. And I have been advocating time and again that how carbon capture and utilization project in cement sector, in power or steel sector, how that can be implemented, though there are various funds available for CCS, but at the moment there is no breakthrough. So my wish is that when we go to COP27 in November in Egypt, we must present that LeadIT has been able to implement A, B, C project. Like Mr. Jay might be aware that Indian cement sector is fully prepared for low carbon economy, because its journey started not during Paris Climate Agreement, but as early as in 2013. So Indian industry is broadly aware of what can be done for decarbonization, except that what can be done to get green finance for decarbonization, particularly personally myself, who has been also participating in many conferences or workshops, still not sure. So I think that would be very, very important. And second, now to give assurance to the industry that some progress would be made. I think timeline has to be created, that under what timeline, what would be done, so that industry gets involved in a big way. Like 2 days back, we had a meeting of Development Council for Cement of Government of India. So there also the major issue which came was that yes, cement sector can decarbonize, but who would support it? So I would say let support become. And on this point also, still we are talking of commercial viability of the technology. Friends, it's time when we also understand the cost of no action, cost of inaction. And based on that, I think if we can find out the viability in different way, it would be better. Otherwise, the new technologies, low carbon technologies, using hydrogen in cement plant, green hydrogen in steel plant or CCU, etc., that will not see the light of the day in next few years. But if countries, UNFCCC, they are ready to experiment and take the risk, because otherwise we have the risk of humanity. So I think this is one area where I would say that we should work on it. And last one is, everywhere collaboration is required. Everywhere partnership is required. It is just not the government to government partnership, but maybe individual sector or individual company, they would also require partnership. So let this platform, which have more than say 13 or 16 governments and maybe 19 companies, even they can also join together. And it's not necessarily only cement to cement, but it can be cement and steel or petrochemical, because what we need to do is how to avoid fossil fuel, how to use more renewable energy, how to generate green hydrogen and use it. So for that also, across the sectors, some partnership would be required. So these are few thoughts, and then thereafter, if any question is there for me, I'll be too happy. But I must say that LeadIT, under the guidance of Stockholm Institute and TERI, is playing very important role to to motivate the industry. Because I was also in one of the session workshop which was taken up by GIZ in a very effective way. So there also I could see the enthusiasm of the people. People are coming forward and sharing their thoughts, their actions, that we want to decarbonize in A way, V way. And I'm sure once Mr. Anirban Ghosh also speaks, then everybody will be able to know that what Indian companies are doing. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks to TERI.
Ms. Singhi, thank you very much. Again, you've done something very important. Highlighted not just finance, but also this entire issue of first loss guarantee. Take the risk, catalyze action, and above all, to our European friends, best practices. You demonstrate something there. Let me assure you, we will be your big, huge, scaled up, not just pilot, actually doing it for the world. Thank you, Mr. Singh. I will now turn to a counselor in the German embassy in Delhi, Dr. Anshe Berger. Botschaftsrat Berger, geben Sie mir diese Gelegenheit, Ihnen hier herzlich willkommen zu heißen. Ich habe kaum Gelegenheit, Deutsch zu üben, aber das wäre sehr schön. Madam, your country and India are leaders in terms of economic cooperation. And now let me also say political coming together, strategic partnerships, and so on. It's a country which spurred India's industrial development right from the get-go after we became independent. Indeed, the most important names that you see among the common people in India are names that have a connection with Germany. You are important for us as perhaps the most important source of technological support and innovation. And of course, I can't forget, we have GIZ here, KfW, the Bundesministerium, also huge amounts of support directly as a country, but also via the European Union. We deeply appreciate your presence. And my question to you ideally would be, if you would say a few words, that you have a number of these financial institutions and you work very well with us. What can we do in India in terms of developing financial institutions so that we can try and take this entire business forward of industry transition, clean development, because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, money matters. Frau Dr. Antje Berger, the screen is yours.
Ambassador Puri, I'm so excited about your warm words and also your energy and your enthusiasm and how you carried us throughout the last 3 days. I was also very pleased how you interacted with my Minister Lemke, and I'm very impressed by your excellent German. Vielen, vielen Dank dafür. Es ist ganz toll. Danke. And I will come to your question on financial institution later on. Unfortunately, I'm as a lawyer by training. I'm not an expert on financial institutions, but I'm quite sure that I can give at least some hints. So yes, dear participants, colleagues, friends, namaste. I'm also very pleased to be here. Thank you so much. And as you might be aware, Germany has last year strengthened its climate goals considerably as part of the European Green Deal, but also of the Paris Agreement. There was also a very important decision of our Constitutional Court. So our goal is to reach climate neutrality by 2045. And India, the EU and its member states and others, they really have a leading role when it comes to mitigation. Ambassador Puri has already mentioned our leading roles, but also let me re-stress it. The European Union is number 3 when it comes to being a CO2 emitter, and India is number 4, of course, knowing that the cumulative CO2 budget of India is much smaller than that of the other 3 major polluters. India has taken enormous leadership in mitigation and climate action as the representative of developing countries of all the climate COPs. It has a leading role within the G20. It is, of course, the largest democracy, and most important now, it was the initiator of the ISA, the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and of course of our in the Swedish leadership group. Germany also has acknowledged responsibility and its leading role when it comes to mitigation and climate action. We know that we are one of the major European economic powerhouses, and also because of our past CO2 accumulation in the atmosphere. And we are also a nation of engineers. We do not only want to do the so-called Energiewende, we also hope to know how to do the Energiewende and trust that we are one of the mothers of it, not only on a national and on a European level, but also on a global level. And we, EU, Germany and India believe in the power of renewable energy and other sustainable technologies, including green hydrogen. As it was already mentioned 4 times today, but also I would like to congratulate the government of India of yesterday's policy on green hydrogen, the phase 2. Sorry, the phase 1, we were hoping on phase 2. So Germany also has a hydrogen strategy of 2020, which foresees 9 billion euro on the national level and 2 billion euro on the international level. Likewise, there is a EU strategy on hydrogen with Clean Hydrogen Alliances, which also seeks partners like India. We all know that industry transition is crucial for achievements of Germany's ambitious climate targets. out of the different industrial sectors. Similar to India, steel, chemicals, and cement are major energy consumers and account, together with heavy transport, for more than 25% of Germany's total emissions. The German Ministry for Environment, BMUV, has set up a competence center on climate change mitigation in energy-intensive industry in Cottbus, where a team supports the decarbonization of industry, of hard-to-abate industry. The BMUV has also established a Power-to-X lab Lausitz, a think tank cross-linking the electricity sector with other sectors such as industry and transport. And we also have an international Power-to-X hub in Berlin. And together with partners from around the world, we catalyze the global breakthrough of sustainable produced synthetic fuel and chemicals for economic development and climate protection globally. While the steel sector in Germany is focusing on the role of green hydrogen and helping to decarbonize, the large cement players in Germany are expecting carbon capture, utilization and storage as the most promising solution. And according to recent research, Germany would also need to suck pollution out of industrial sites and store it on the ground. Also, 73 million tons of CO2 will need to be removed through carbon capture future technology by 2045 from the atmosphere. Furthermore, industry sectors in Germany underutilize readily available interventions to improve material efficiency and circularity, like reuse, recycling, and remanufacturing. German global companies, some of them were already mentioned, like Salzgitter, ThyssenKrupp and Heidelberg Cement, pledged commitments towards industry transition and net zero, knowing that the cost of non-action would be much higher than the cost of action. Energy-intensive sectors in Europe can apply for funds from the European Commission's Innovation Fund, which is to unlock around 10 billion euro to finance CO2-reducing technologies between 2020 and 30. And the money will come from the sale of 450 million emission trading system certificates. India, EU, and EU member states and others are working closely together to support India's ambitious climate goals. We heard them all at the COP27 by Honorable Prime Minister Modi. And the knowledge from the EU Innovation Fund and other multi-stakeholder initiatives need to be shared. Domestic and international funding mechanism and technology transfer for industry transition in India in hard-to-abate sectors need to be explored and expanded. Together with the EU and others, Germany is proud to cooperate closely with India in its endeavors to reach its ambitious climate goals and also biodiversity goals. The EU Strategic Partnership for the Implementation of the Paris Agreement, SPIPA, is a key supporting instrument in this regard, and the German government is proud to co-found it. Also, the government of Germany, with its 4 key climate ministries, is proud to support India in other various projects. I would like to highlight one of the key frameworks, that's the International Climate Initiative. We have more than 42 projects in India, mainly in the field of mitigation, but also adaptation, biodiversity, and forest. We are, as the German government, as ICI, we are working also, of course, very close with the leadership group for energy transition. I'm really happy to be here and share my thoughts, and I'm sure that together we can act for Earth. I would also like to invite you to the Berlin Energy Transition Dialogue end of March, and I'm very pleased to remember last year presence of Dr. Ashok Kumar. Thank you again very much for this. And this is also the opportunity to learn about our new climate envoy, Jennifer Morgan. As you know, the German government, as the Americans and the Chinese and the Indian, they re-stress the role of the foreign ministries when it comes to Klimaaußenpolitik, to climate action by foreign ministries. And this will also be an opportunity to explore the financial mechanisms. We have the KfW, Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau, who helps Germans when it comes to innovative ideas. If you want to have a new, if you want to do a sustainable building, for example, but they are also helping worldwide on a really large scale. And with these words, I would like to say thank you and hand over to the chair.
Dr. Achibega, thank you very much. Thank you indeed very much. I knew I had a friend there. I knew I had a friend for two reasons that you mentioned. One, thank you for speaking up for TERI's next round of action, Act for Earth. We deeply appreciate your commitment and your support. But I knew I had a friend because if any of you are reading India's newspapers, and today's Hindustan Times had an article by me saying exactly what she just said. Climate negotiations require diplomats in action. So thank you very much. I knew it. That's great. So let me move on further. And I'm going to call another friend of mine, Anirban Ghosh, who heads sustainability in one of India's largest conglomerates, the Mahindra Group. Now, when you step out on the roads in India, in Delhi, the chances are that every third or fourth vehicle will be theirs. But if you go outside Delhi, let me tell you, you will find it hard to find a vehicle which is not theirs. This is the nature of the Mahindra Group. And in a sense, madam, it's the kind of group coming from Germany, which you see all over the place in Europe and the rest of the world. But let me also say something else. Far from only providing mobility, they want to be in the lead on sustainability. And we have not requested him to join us just because he comes from a big company, but because he personally and his company stand for sustainability and for looking at ways by which not only will they make a difference, but they will make a significant difference in India, and I therefore say in the world and in the globe itself. Anirban, you're also members with us in the India-EU Track 2 dialogue, and soon you'll be talking to your counterparts on industry transition. I think it is particularly good that we have you here with us today. We'd like to hear some of your views, your ideas, personal, corporate, ideas that you have crucibled in the context of India and EU's interaction. The screen is yours, Anirban.
Thank you very much for having me here. Ambassador Puri, I don't know how to stop thanking you for your generous introduction. I can assure you that I'm feeling a huge amount of pressure as I try to share my thoughts with you on this panel. You know, given all the efforts that are being made, industry transition is inevitable. We knew it was always necessary, given the large proportion of emissions that was caused by industry. But because of all the good work that has happened, it is fair to say that industry transition is inevitable. But industry transition consists of four broad areas, and they've all been referred to by the speakers today. But let me just list out the four. First, clean operations. Second, clean materials. Third, clean products. And fourth, circularity. Maybe there are one or two more, but these are the four that come to my mind. We've already heard about the wonderful work that has happened in clean operations in the cement sector in India. It is a beacon, not just for India, but for the whole world. But let me let out a little secret. I don't think I've mentioned it before, but today we make almost 1.8 cars with the same energy that we used to make one car about 8 years ago. We are on the verge of doubling energy productivity in the automobile sector. And I'm very sure that cement and automobiles are not the only highlights in the clean operations industry transition here in India and anywhere else in the world. So it's fair to say that in operations, we've got a lot of traction, and we are gathering more and more traction and accelerating in moving towards becoming net neutral on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. But then there are the other three areas which are a little bit more difficult. First, clean materials. We've talked about cement and steel and aluminium and hydrogen and ammonia and chemicals and plastic, 7 of them, which probably attract most attention from all of us. Yes, there is the First Movers Coalition, whereas Mr. Singhi mentioned, we are founding members of the coalition, saying that if you were to make clean materials available, consuming industries like ours will be happy to adopt these clean materials. But that's a small step forward, a lot more to do. The third area is clean products. And the product that we talk about the most is electric vehicles. But there's green buildings, and there's also the humble bamboo toothbrush, just to give you a sense of the very large spectrum over which clean products can emerge as we go forward. And then, of course, there's circularity, a journey where we've barely started, where a lot of technologies are required and a lot of solutions are required so that we can move away from the linear economy that we've traditionally had in the past. Now, if you look at clean materials, clean products, and circularity, the common theme there is the necessity of appropriate and effective technologies. Wherever the technologies have emerged, we have made progress. And wherever the technologies are still to emerge, we are all talking about the necessity and haven't yet made progress. So in that sense, if I were to look at what are the 3 key imperatives going forward, I would say first, money for technology. And I was delighted to hear about the EU Innovation Fund. Money for technology. Second, policy to accelerate adoption. When a new technology emerges, it takes a lot of time for it to get adopted. In fact, those of us who've studied marketing at some point in time have learned about the whole process and how adoption could take anywhere up to 20 or 30 years for the technology to scale up. This is not something we can afford today in the climate change scenario, and therefore the need to have appropriate policy to accelerate adoption, and lastly, business to scale solutions that have emerged. So 3 things: money for technology, policy to accelerate adoption, and business to scale. If there is one technology that I personally think is at the heart of a whole lot of solutions, it is energy storage technology. Because when we think of energy storage technology, we see the likelihood of solving the renewable energy problem at scale. We see the chance to solve the electric vehicle problem at scale. And we also see the possibility of solving the clean hydrogen problem at scale. Now imagine if in the next 10 years, we were able to solve all these problems: renewable energy, electric vehicles, and clean hydrogen. And the only thing that is common to all three is storage batteries. So if we could invest significantly into radically improving the performance of storage batteries, we would have done mankind a great service. These are some of the things that occurred to me when I read the topic about industry transitions. I know we've come a long way. There are many, many very good examples around the world and in India. But if we have to solve the climate problem, there are many, many bigger steps that we need to take. And I'm sure all of us will work together and collaborate to get the job done. Thank you, Ambassador Puri.
Anirban, thank you very much. And I loved the bit that you said. We need storage. Let's look for storage of fuel rather than that of that not so good guy, carbon. Good idea. Mr. Dan Dorner, the screen is going to be yours. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Thank you, Ambassador.
Mr. Dorner heads the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat. And sir, I have a straightforward question for you. It's an important question. I want to ask you, what will your industrial decarbonization initiative really be promoting? Because frankly speaking, we have now used very long words. But if we do something along those lines, then maybe all that all of us are trying to do would get done relatively quickly and a waypointer would be there. And since it is ministerial, sir, you really have everything with you. But right now, the screen is yours. I request you to speak, if you don't mind, for not more than 5 minutes, because we are running out of time. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ambassador, and thank you to our friends at TERI for the kind invitation. This whole event, this summit, is an important feature of the international calendar, and it's an honor to both join you today and hear the great insights from the excellent panel already. So let me just introduce the Clean Energy Ministerial for a moment before I get on to deal with your question directly, Ambassador. So the Clean Energy Ministerial, or CEM as we call it for short, has a simple single mission of accelerating the deployment of clean energy solutions around the world. And we do this through international collaboration, through our extensive global clean energy community of countries, companies, experts, civil society, and more. But at the heart, as you rightly said, Ambassador, is our ministers, our government members, and we have 29 member countries, a kind of G20 plus grouping, including India, the European Commission, Sweden, Germany, and many others. But why international collaboration? Well, because simply it is critical to achieving our clean energy and climate goals faster, cheaper, and more effectively for all. And the International Energy Agency has even put a number on it, because they say that the difference between good and bad international collaboration efforts in this space is not days, weeks, months, or even years of delay. It's several decades of delay. The difference between achieving net zero in line with our goals or decades past it. So it's therefore not a nice to do, but a must do. So in this context, the CEM has 22 active international work streams today, spanning the clean energy spectrum. And across these work streams, we are looking to supercharge the scale of clean energy transitions, supercharge action across all sectors of the economy, and supercharge an inclusive all of society approach. And last year, India, jointly with the UK and with the active leadership of Germany and Canada, launched the CEM Industrial Deep Decarbonisation Initiative that you referenced, IDDI for short. And the focus is simple: to jointly work across the public and private sectors to stimulate demand for low carbon industrial materials, such as steel and cement. And with coordination support from UNIDO and collaboration with national governments, industry leaders and key institutions, including, I'm really pleased to see LeadIT here today. It's really great to be on the stage with them again. IDDI is working across 3 key pillars. Number 1, ensuring transparent data practices across the supply chain to allow us to get a better understanding of embodied carbon, which has long been a key bottleneck towards action in this space. As we often refer, you can't measure you can't manage what you can't measure. Number 2, enabling consistent and standardized assessments of low or where possible, zero carbon products, and allowing in a common language and understanding of these products. This will require close engagement and conversations, not just with the governments, but with the industry. But this means that rather than producing many national or regional standards and markets, we can have a global one. And the IDDI is aiming to do that. And third and final is a pillar on procurement specifically. As the standards and protocols continue to be defined, the aim is to establish ambitious public and private sector procurement targets to create demand and a market for these products. And in line with that final pillar, the IDDI member governments have launched a global green public procurement campaign at COP26 in Glasgow. And in doing so, the UK minister and all the signatories of the campaign wanted to give a simple, clear message. If you make it, we'll buy it. This is a clear intent from the governments to commit to specific goals and targets for low carbon products, thereby assuring the industry that they can start a virtuous cycle for low carbon steel and cement. And through international working groups, including the public sector, industry and technical experts, that community is now in the process of defining these common goals. But many of the collaborating governments, including India, have been initiating action and taking steps to drive this change. We've heard earlier today about the Perform Achieve Trade scheme involving the key industrial sectors in India, and that's certainly a standout effort to decarbonise the industrial sector. And to mobilise conversation amongst industry and key stakeholders on the ground, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, in coordination with UNIDO and IDDI, has also undertaken workshops to identify actions that will help move this from discussion to action as quickly as possible. Now, we link our practical work streams with political engagement through our annual ministerial meeting, and India is going to be hosting next year's Clean Energy Ministerial in 2023, deliberately and very positively hosting it in line with its G20 presidency, opening the opportunity for huge synergies between international political leadership and international practical action. And for India, I hope this will provide a unique opportunity to elevate some of its priorities for international decarbonisation to the global stage. This year's ministerial is actually being hosted by the United States in Pittsburgh at the end of September, and we know that industrial decarbonisation will also be a priority for them. And as a stepping stone to these gatherings, the Government of India is actually hosting our SEM Global Assembly in New Delhi from the 6th to the 8th of April this year. And so we really hope that many of you will be able to join, and we really look forward to seeing you, because India's international leadership on industrial decarbonisation and clean energy transitions more broadly is hugely important, and this is valued extremely highly by all in our global community. Thank you, Ambassador.
Mr. Donner, thank you very much. I am very strongly with you, and I believe that we have a vested interest in this collaboration. And so therefore, it's not just that, it's coinciding with our G20 commitments. It is because there is in India stakeholding for this particular kind of industrial transition, decarbonization to take place. And I am very convinced that it cannot take place simply without collaboration. And so the real C word needs to be collaboration rather than the other C word, which was important for 150 years. Thank you so much, Mr. Donner. I now turn to somebody else on the absolute practical side of things. Mr. Prabodha Acharya, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer of the JSW Group, huge in the area of steel here in India. Sir, here people have declared that it's all done. But you are the ones who are really going to make it done. And I mean it globally. Because, having seen and dealt with steel worldwide, it may not have been our times, but it's going to be our times. And I don't think we are doing away with the whole idea of steel right across the developing world, including India, if we really need to forge ahead on our absolute developing imperative. Mr. Acharya, you are perhaps in that sense the most important key individual in terms of actual on-the-ground implementation. I need to request you to speak for about a minute or for about 5 minutes, simply because we really have overshot ourselves. But the screen is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Puri, and good afternoon to all of you who are listening. You are absolutely right when you stated that steel is important for the economy. But at the same time, I just want to bring this is the important material to support decarbonizations in other sectors and also to build climate resilient societies. But the flip side is that itself, while making steel, we produce a lot of carbon. And that is where I think the responsibility lies in us to decarbonize it quickly. When we see how it is going to shape up and what pathway we should make, and specifically you asked me what are the practical ways to implement those decarbonizations in Indian steel sector, and we take that responsibility being the largest steel producer in India. We know that India is going to build a tremendous infrastructures in the steel sector in the next decade. It's almost building in the primary sectors. I see that we have to work in three important time zones to accelerate our decarbonizations in the steel sector. That is what we do in this decade while we build new infrastructure, then what we do possibly from 30 to 50, and then what we do beyond 50 to make it possible that this sector will decarbonize and will achieve a net zero. In this sector, in this decade, while we work with the existing technologies, which is mostly primary technology to make steel from iron ore, I think that we are focusing on how we can use the best available technologies while making steel, whether by utilizing all the waste gases, using renewable energy, and using low carbon material for making steel. That's either through replacing the coal with natural gas. And at the same time, we need to possibly work on green hydrogen has a great potential to decarbonize steel sector. So we will see a lot of demonstration projects happening, and use of carbon capture and storage that is going to go hand in hand when we build BF-BOF technologies. I don't know whether many of you know that two of the operating carbon capture storage projects are in steel sector in India. JSW Steel is operating a 100 TPD carbon capture storage project, and last year Tata Steel also implemented a 5 TPD carbon capture storage. So this has a huge potential to couple with blast furnace and BOF technology to reduce the carbon emissions. As we go ahead beyond 2000, I mean, because when we are building the BOF technologies or putting money now in building huge infrastructure in producing steel, so naturally they are not going to be redundant in next 20-30 years. So therefore, carbon capture utilization project is going to be very important factor going ahead. And at the same time, green hydrogen has a lot of potential in producing fossil-free steel in India. The challenge right now, what we have in Indian steel sector is absence of a lot of scraps, because this making steel through scrap route has less carbon footprint. So as we go getting, the steel takes almost 35 to 40 years to become scrap. So as we go ahead, possibly the scrap becomes available, and then we build more scrap route to make steel. So that is a current challenge. The other challenge is that we have a lot of raw materials, that is iron ore, but there's a low quality of iron ore. So that is taking a lot of carbon input to reduce. But I'm very optimistic that Indian steel industry will be able to decarbonize faster. For example, in JSW, we have already taken a target to reduce 42% of their emissions by 2030, and to follow a trajectory of sustainable development scenario to ensure that we have significant decarbonization by 2070. And if you look at this requires, this takes to the point that it requires almost $250 billion of additional investment in the steel sector till 2050 to decarbonize. One good point is here, because I really like the point that this sector is not hard to abate, but it is possible to abate. And it requires only 0.1% of GDP of the world to decarbonize the entire steel sector in the world, while it is already contributing to 0.7% of GDP. So with that, I think let me stop here.
Mr. Acharya, I want to thank you for this very encouraging ending which you said, that a sector which is such a massive contributor to growth, development and well-being really requires a fraction of what it gives to become an even better giver. And I am glad that companies like yours, you personally, are involved in this and are setting high targets for yourself. I have little doubt that hard to abate in the style of Mr. Mahendra Singhi will become a subject matter of yesterday. Thank you very much to every one of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank our colleagues from the European Union, all the countries and other institutions from Europe which have participated here, the Stockholm Environment Institute, GTZ, all the others, or GIZ, I'm sorry, I'm still a bit of an old guy from the old days, the German embassy itself, and to Mr. Donner and all the others and my colleagues here in TERI who've participated. Thank you very, very much for this. I want to just leave one last thought. India and Europe have to collaborate. Why do we have to collaborate? Because there is a great deal of similarities in the way we do business. This similarity makes it possible for the collaboration that we seek to go forward in a manner which is relatively easy to do. And this collaboration can therefore result in faster results. And if there are faster results, the entire world will benefit. I therefore look forward very much myself on trying to provide some policy inputs. But let me say the governments on the policy side, but more than that, industry on the actual doing side, that we will see a sea change. Madam Botschaftsrat, es wurde nicht nur eine Energiewende. It will actually be an industry transition Wende that you will see here in India, a climate Wende. So feel that. Thank you very much to all of you. Arup, I hand over to you. I told you 10 minutes and you wanted 1 minute and you've got that.
Thank you.
Arup, the screen is yours.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador Puri. Colleagues, we have come to the end of this 100-minute exciting session. On behalf of the EU team, the GIZ team, and the entire TERI family, I thank you for your presence today at the Global Agenda for Industry Transition, Relevance, Challenges and Opportunities for India session. This session was held as part of our annual World Sustainable Development Summit. This year, colleagues, the summit series completed 2 decades of institutionalization and is the only track-to event of this scale hosted in a developing country. Thank you for your inspiration, Ambassador Joanna, and the Government of India representatives, Ms. Rajshri Ray from Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change, and Dr. Ashok Kumar from Bureau of Energy Efficiency. Your perspectives reinforce the relevance and the importance of the India-Sweden partnership to launch LeadIT. We at TERI are proud of our association with the LeadIT initiative under the able guidance of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, as well as the SPIPA project established by EU. Thank you, Ambassador Puri, for steering this conversation with this powerful and diverse panel. As always, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you as the chairperson for the discussions. Colleagues, leading market players from Indian industry, representing cement and steel, have joined us today, alongside the Mahindra Group, who have provided us demand side perspectives. Today, with the presence of our global partners, LeadIT, Clean Energy Ministerial, the Councillor of Climate and Environment, the German embassy, as well as the ambassador for Stockholm Plus 50. Thank you, Dr. Goche Mete, Dr. Berger, Mr. Dan Donor, Mr. Prabodha Acharya, Mr. Anirvan Ghosh, and of course, Mr. Mahinder Singhi. Your thoughts keep us upbeat and push ourselves to be relevant and contemporary across times. The perspectives from the panel today focused on the importance and timeliness of multi-stakeholder initiatives in driving the global agenda for industry transitions. Discussions with the panelists addressed various facets required to enable and accelerate industry transitions in India, including public-private partnerships, technologies, finance, policy, and regulation. This year, owing to the challenges posed by the COVID pandemic, we are leveraging digital platforms to connect with all of you. And I'd like to thank all the participants today who have joined this session. The participants represent international organizations, public sector units, government agencies, global think tanks, industry associations, and the academia. Thank you all participants for your participation today. Last, I would like to thank all colleagues who have put in efforts to put together today's event. Mr. Edwin Koekkoek from the EU team, Fanny from the Swedish government, Mr. Jayakumar Gaurav from the GIZ team, Mr. Girish Sethi, Aditya, Shrija, Anuradha from the TERI team. Of course, another set of colleagues are working at the back end to manage the IT infrastructure, the social media, and the other communication means to enable all of us connect at this virtual session today. Thank you all for your presence today. We hope you enjoyed the sessions, just like ourselves hosting you, and we intend to bring similar engaging sessions to you. On behalf of the TERI family, I'm signing off, and we look forward to your participation in our upcoming engagements. Thank you, and bye-bye. Have a great weekend ahead. Announcements of the next session summit will appear on your screen shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Madam Goche.
Thank you.